Hi, everyone. I'm Mike Conley with Pay Forward Coaching. We provide free career services for individuals who need it and otherwise might not have access to it. You can learn more about us at payforwardcoaching.com. Until now, most of the work we've been doing is one-on-one mentoring sessions with volunteer coaches. This is our first video content, and I'm very excited about it. We have three great sales leaders that I had the personal privilege to work with, all of them in my career, sharing their insights on how they evaluate sales candidates. The hope is to give transparency to anyone who's in sales or anyone who wants to get into sales about how hiring managers think about interviewing and how they think about career development so candidates can prepare themselves and prepare to differentiate themselves. With that, let's get to the experts.
Hi, my name is Fas. I currently work at HubSpot as a sales manager on the mid-market team.
Well, I'm Chris Nashid. I'm the VP of Revenue at Leasecake.
Hi, I am Michaela Bransfield. I am the Director of Sales for the Canada business at Car Gurus. Sure. So I think the top two or three things are one, tenacity. Can this person show that they can persevere through difficult situations, constant change, and the ups and downs of the role? Two, like accountability. Can they own what they're working on day in and day out and be able to go with and own like the good and the bad and be self-aware in that? And then three, which I think is most important, is being a teammate. So I think sales reps have a stereotype of individual success wins, which I really don't agree with. There's never going to be only one successful person on a team, and no sales leader only wants one successful person holding their team. So knowing that being in sales means to help each other and build each other up, and you can still do all of that while maintaining your individual success.
Typically, when I'm hiring salespeople, really anybody, but primarily salespeople, like I'm looking for the things I can't teach. Like I'm hunting for the intangibles, right? So, do they have if I'm looking at their background and I'm seeing some pretty consistent progression throughout their career, or even if it's somebody that's like straight out of school, looking at their, what they did at school, were they part of clubs or teams or what have you. Like I like competitive people, so I typically like to engage with folks that have been in part of some sort of team sport, or collaborative group type environment in school.
Some of the questions I like to ask. So one, I like to ask like kind of a non-sales related question of like, what's something you've taught yourself recently, just to see if that's a characteristic that they have not only within work, but I find that those individuals who are, constantly learning new things outside of work, whether that's picking up a new book or picking up a new hobby, a new sport, a new activity, I find that that also translates into their work life as well. So another good question I like to ask, I think more related to like how they approach it in work is, what's something that you did differently if you missed a number, or what's the last critical piece of feedback that your manager gave you and how did you implement it into your process?
So I think that it's important to have like a set list of questions and answers that you want to get out of the candidate, but I think it's pretty dry to just only ask those questions. And I think that based upon a candidate's answer is where you continue to dig in and more personalize the follow-up questions to really understand who that candidate is.
Like I said, I'm not rigid. The only default question I'll ask every time is, "Tell me about yourself." Like that's how I kick off every conversation. Um, But outside of that, based on that answer response, then that kind of will drive the direction of the conversation from there.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that, it's a incredibly competitive job pool. And I think anything that helps you to stand out, you should explore doing. But what I will say to that is if you're doing it, it needs to have a certain intent to it, right? You shouldn't just, if you're just sending a, hey, I'm looking forward to the interview, for the sake of sending that email, then I don't think that's going to be, have the value that you intended it to have, right? That make you truly stand out. Now, if you're being personal, it's very similar to prospecting, right? If you can personalize it, show that you did some level of research either about the company, the hiring manager that you're reaching out to, the role itself, or something that you're looking forward to discussing even in the conversation, I think those are value adds that make it, appropriate to reach out, versus just something generic.
I think that it's totally okay to reach out to the hiring manager prior to applying for a role, I think that, you want to make sure that this is the right fit for you before applying. And if they have the time to give you, 15 or 30 minutes to talk about the role openly, go ahead and do so. From that conversation, if you choose to apply, I think that's where you kind of draw the line and you don't reach out any further outside of the company's standard interview process. But I think you should respect that interview process and also respect the hiring manager's time at that point.
So I don't believe it's a bad thing. I typically, now there's a caveat to that, right? Because things like LinkedIn, they have this, you should reach out to the hiring manager, and then they have a template. So, I just went through a round where I'm hiring another account exec and I got 15 of the same message in my inbox. Nope. Right. I want, like, if you're going to do that, like, put your spin on it, right? Stand out from the pack. Like, I love that. Like, nothing, I don't love anything more than that, because that helps me cut out the noise too, right? And it shows me that you really want it. But, and also too, like, those that reach out and they're like, they've done their homework, like they looked at my profile, they looked at the company profile and some of the things that maybe they're in the news or whatever, and they try to pull it all together. That to me gives me a lot of confidence that this is what you're going to do when you're in a sales seat, right? You're going to do your research, you're going to prep, and you're going to know who you're talking to. I love that.
I think if you want to get promoted, you have to own your career progression and not expect your manager to own it for you. And I also think in sales, a lot of people think that, well, my numbers speak for themselves. And that's really not what hiring managers are looking for when they're trying to promote people and expand upon someone's career. So I think, like, one, yes, your numbers are great, but how are you as a teammate? Are you helping with new hires and training? Are you getting involved with interdepartmental projects and showing that you're an asset to not only yourself, but to the business? And I also think that, again, owning that conversation means that you continue to bring your career progression conversation to your manager and not expecting them to always come to you with it, because that like, they have a team of 10 per se, and you have to kind of take accountability and ownership of your own career.
So, I mean, outside of like being consistent in the expectations of their current role, right? I like people that are proactive about it, meaning they're not waiting until they've been a killer for 6 months and like, when are you going to promote me? Like, that sucks, right? I want people that take that time to be like, hey, Chris, really love this, and I want to figure out, like, I want to know from your seat, what is it that I need to do in order to continue to move up in the business and continue to develop my skills and my professional development. And so from there, we'll typically set up some weekly cadence or monthly cadence, so, whatever the frequency is, and we focus on very specific sort of gaps in the process or the things that I feel like they're going to need to start to showcase in their current role for the next thing, right? And again, partnering with me, but also partnering with peers as well, or people that are in that current role today, to understand, like, well, what did you have to do to get from here to here? I want people to take some self-accountability.
Doing the job before you get the job, and it comes with a lot of responsibility. It's responsibility, and it's also a privilege, right? Because part of the reason why that makes the most successful leaders is that joy they get from helping others, that impact that they see when they, improve someone else's performance versus their own.
But I always kick off every interview with a tell me about yourself, because there's so many different ways that they take it, right? Are they going to tell me about them, the individual, which is kind of really what I'm looking for? More often than not, they're giving me a rundown of their resume. It's like, come on, man, like, I can read the resume, right? We'll get to that. But I want to know about you. Like, what are the things I don't know that's on the sheet of paper that you think I should know or would be important for me to know, to paint a full picture of you as a candidate?
So I think it's a lot of, like, example type questions. Like, can you tell me a time where, you worked on this or you did that? So I think a couple of my go-tos are, tell me a time like your manager had given you constructive feedback. What was that feedback and what did you do with their feedback? And I think that their answer should be able to tell you if they believed that feedback, if they took it to heart, and if they worked on to try to turn it around. I think another go-to is, tell me a time where you're learning something new and what approach did you take? And then I also like asking, like, share a time or a project that you worked on with it, whether a teammate or someone in a supporting department, and what role did you take of that project? And then looking back, like what would you do differently and what were your key takeaways from that?
I've asked candidates like, if you could give a TED talk on anything, what would it be and why? I'm always curious in that answer because TED Talks are often business related, and I'm curious in here about how account executive or a candidate thinks about the business, and what they care about the most. So, and then I think other questions that I like to ask would be, I do really like to ask, like, give me the last piece of constructive criticism you got, and what did you do to either implement it, or how did you feel about it? It shows again that coachability aspect that I think is really important. Other questions would be, I always like to ask, like, give me an example of how you've collaborated with a cross-functional counterpart. I think to me, that's like a really important part of the role, especially like in where we are now. How do you incorporate customer success? Like, how do you work with your, engineers and different functions across the segment and across the business? I think it, helps you to identify like really strong candidates.